Looks like I'm live. Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning in for another Project Grand Involved game development stream. Today, actually, before we get into the inactive character creation and setup, what I would like to do is share with you the setup and structure of the level traveling. Excuse me. Yep. So here we are. Let's switch the scene over. This is the apartment actor. Here it is in the world. You can see that it has these two designated zones. And basically it's two different entrances, front door, side door type deal. And just to showcase the way the traveling works, well, basically, depending on whichever door you go through, the collision is called for the interaction event. These are both called on, well, this is called on the child parent because the parent class only has this green collision. The red one was added for this specific child class. But they both function the same, basically checking for the player character's interaction box, and then we enable or disable the signature, or sorry, excuse me, the signifier. And depending on which door you're facing, you basically get to route through different choices. The front door is basically, the idea is the front door is locked at nighttime, and the side door is always accessible. In the full game, you'll have a transitionary lobby in between that you probably don't want to always go through, which is why the two doors are there. But for right now, they both route to the same level. So let's see here. We can hop into the world and start playing, and you can see both doors, work the same way, and they both route to the same level, the inside of the apartment. If we, exit, we're back outside. And same for the side door. And let's see here. If I fast forward time to evening, or to nighttime rather, yeah, this door is locked for the night. If come over here, still works. We get inside of here, and if we go back out, we are at the side door. So it works, it's fully functional. We can spawn to whichever location we desire as designers, which is perfect. How this is done, the second part as to how it's done, so these are the entry points, and each of them have, if I go inside the actor, you can see it even easier, these arrows, these locations, basically, main door, and I've called it left side door. On the level blueprint for this level, on begin play, after we set up the references for the rules of the level, we basically, call into this function set spawn transform, and I don't need that. But the transform is simply we grab the new spawn location from the game instance, and depending on what that name is, we switch to the referenced actor in the level. And we can have as many of these as we need per level. Some levels that are simpler won't even use this. We'll just use the default player start. But more complex levels, such as the city, the hub environment, would have several. You can see this last, and we can add as many as we want. I've added one for the south exit, which I'm going to add shortly. You can see it down there, so it has a locator as well, this arrow. I'm calling them locators, but they're just arrows, arrow components on the actors. But it's pretty simple. It's not incredibly complex. I just went with the simplest. I just went with the simplest approach in setting it up. Hey Kratos, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. I was just going over the solution to the problem with where we ended last stream. Game's going good, living the dream, I guess. Every day a new challenge, and with it comes difficulty, but also also a good amount of fun. For today's stream, I'm going to go over I'm not going to go over, I'm going to attempt to figure out and set up the NPC inactive character base. So we have one from Maya here. Basically, if she's off to the side here, the idea is there's two playable characters in Project Grand Vault. We have, Vance and Maya. And right now I've been playing as Vance, and I could play as Maya and talk to NPC Maya, but that would never be the case. Depending on which character we're playing as, the other NPC would populate. But this is the idea. We have an actor, like an NPC actor, that can just chill in their idle, and we can talk to them. But we want specific options, right? We don't just want like a conversation. I mean, conversation's good, and we want to allow for that. But we probably want to, well, from a design perspective, there's certain options we need to enable. Blueprint requires updating. Please resave. Okay, let's compile and do that. Let's check that out. And probably we should close all these tabs we're not using anymore. Sure. Just making some notes here. And where are we? Level traveling. I don't think we need a game instance, at least not right now. We'll close it all. We have our NPC character. And that's all that's happening here. Just a simple conversation string. Okay, and just looking through my notes here with regards to the options we want to enable. I want to enable a selection of 4 options, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Perhaps we need to figure that out first. I mean, there was one stage of the conversation system where it was vastly inferior and kind of buggy to how it is now, where it's much more stable. But it had several options. But right now, our options are kind of just twofold. If I grab our officer, we'll throw him in here. He should have some options. I believe he gives us a quest, actually. Yeah, so these 2 options that we can populate, and the dialogue that goes along with it. Let's head over to our UMG folder, check out the dialogue. And interactions, I would guess. So we have our questions and our dialogue sample. The question widget just has 2 buttons as of right now. Button 0 and button 1. Here we have our toggle input. Focus down, focus up. Yeah, we're going to have to work in here a little bit. Unfortunately, I want to get right into the creation of, our alternate character NPC, but I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself, like I said. Hopefully this won't take too long. It's a little bit of upgrading, so to speak. Index right now is 0 and 1, so this is going to have to get a bit more complex as we go ahead in here to accommodate for those additional choices. I just want to see how this is spawned. I believe it is spawned from the dialogue sample. If we head over here to the event graph, launch questions, blueprint interface. And that is only if. That's fine. Begin typewriter. If it is a question, we launch questions, and we're calling this on the interact actor, which in this case would be our officer. Just going to look at him for reference, because he's sort of like the base. He's not the parent, but he's sort of the base where I've built most of the functions on. And here we have the event launch questions interface being called, and then we call reference question box setup. Okay. And so basically just call the function on our parent character, so we do have to go grab that. Let's organize these in a way that is sort of logical. I'm going to check out the parent class. Parent class looks just like a police officer, because I needed to give it a mesh. And so I just threw him on there. Yo, Slinger, what's up? Thanks for tuning in, man. Just doing some dialogue upgrading. Let's take a look at these functions we got here. We got our setup, actor name, dialogue. We want the question box setup. That's what is being called here on the child class. So this is the creation of this widget, and this is where it gets created. And you can see here what happens. Let me just take a look through here. We create it, we set it to a variable for reference, and we create a reference of the actor that summoned it on the widget itself. Then we create the text and we add it to viewport, and that's it. So what we have to do here is sort of improve upon this function that's inside of the question widget. Set choice text, right? Set choice text is here. This is what we need to upgrade and sort of improve upon. Ideally, you can see here we're creating the text for each button. Button 1, but in this case, starting with 0, button 0, and button 1, we set the text on each of them, and we want to enable, I want to say at least 4, so we want to double the number of buttons, but we don't want buttons to show up that shouldn't, if you know what I mean. If choice is yes or no, you don't want 4 buttons showing up and 2 of them being inactive or non-functional, because that's just bad. That's just poor design. Perfect. How was your flight? Oh, I guess I should say, how was your trip? That's a much better question. I saw some of the pics. It was pretty dope. No pun intended. Okay, so in the question widget, I'm going to head into the designer. And what I want to do, the simplest way to do this would just be to add 2 more buttons to the button layouts vertical box. So we can copy and paste. And we want button underscore 2 to be here, and we'll throw this up top. And probably want 1 more. Control C, and gotta make sure we paste into the right element in the hierarchy here. Actually, we don't want border. Keep these consistent. We'll call this button 3. and button 2. Oh, dang, might move to Amsterdam? You like it more than Ireland? Or were you never, or was Ireland never a permanent spot in your mind? Um, have some compile errors here. We're going to have to name these appropriately. So 3, oh, whoops, button 3 underscore text. Choice 0 was not found on questions. Oh, I see. Well, I can appreciate that. I can definitely appreciate the need for a challenge. Choice 0. This is weird. So weird. Why are there bound functions on these? Even though I duplicated them. It's very strange. I'm going to save all. Okay, so looking at the designer, we've set up we've doubled the amount of choices, which is sort of what I need at the moment. But this isn't perfect because if we head over to our police officer, talk to him, we have these options that are just showing up and making things really confusing. So those should not show up at all. Also, those two aren't functional in the sense of the indexes we can focus up and down. So let's see here. We have our set pressed color on those components. Looks like we'll have to add 2 more option pins for options 2 and 3. Let's drop this down a little bit and add our references to those buttons. That's the wrong one. Okay, and down here we need to set up some clamps so that we don't over exceed this. And we're gonna have to use some multiplies, or not multiplies, but add and subtracts as well as we increase and decrease the index for the player selection. Just gonna make a bit of space because it's sort of exponentially more complex when you have more than 2 items to select. So let's put this here. Grab these 2, slide them over, and maybe make some space here as well. Okay. So basically we want to get whatever the index is and subtract it. I'm going to subtract it by 1. And take this value and clamp it, and the minimum is going to be 0 because our lowest button index is 0 and our maximum is 3. So that's in essence what our clamp is. And we're going to do the same here, but we're going to increase our index plus 1 and pass it to the same clamp. We can duplicate it, that's fine. And basically the reason we want to clamp these is, hold on, this is focused down. So actually these are reverse. This has to pass through here, and this must pass through here. That's a little better. Basically so that we can increase our index, and then if it's at maximum 3, we can't focus up anymore. And if it's at 0, we can't focus down anymore. Let's see here. Okay, we have to add the state changes to these 2 as well. Let's see how these are set up. So depending on which is selected, we set that to be visible, and we set the opposite to be hidden. Then we change the colors of the other options, the text color. So I believe well, to start, we're definitely going to have to grab references to those buttons. Cursor buttons are one. Okay, so we need to expose these as variables so we can get the cursors for each. The cursor is the size box. So we'll call this cursor underscore, well, we'll type that correctly first. Cursor underscore button 2. Cursor, whoops, underscore button 3. And we have those already exposed as variables, which is perfect. I'll probably compile and save. Okay. Let's see here. So now that we got our cursors for button 2 and button 3, this is my question, can we apply everything to hidden, or do we need a separate function for each? And the answer is we do not, which is fantastic. So basically, it's probably not how you want to do that in terms of a layout. Trying to figure out what the best way would be to organize this. And then we need the text for each one as well, which looks like it's all there. Grab this here, and grab the other one as well. And we don't need to actually change the order of these. These can all stay the same. Only the target would be different. This could also be changed. We can also convert this to a select and set up the index to use as the input for the index. And we could just add some option pins here. So instead of a switch on integer, we could make use of this style of function and then set the option pin to set this as visible. So depending on the index, it would just set the appropriate component as visible. Whoopsies, bring those over here. Let's connect these up. And for hidden, it should be everything else. We can use the same select, which is fine. Whoops. So actually, if 0 is the index, we don't want that to be. Oh, you know what? Maybe I spoke too soon. You can't wire up multiple, and selecting a single single item. So we don't want the select actually. We just want to wire it up like this. So those would be then hidden. Trying to find a way where this is not so cluttered, but it's a little difficult. And then so we're setting the button state visibility here. And then we also set the text color. And those could use the same a similar structure. It can't be the exact same. We have to call it front here so it knows to work for a text object. But we could use the same index and add those same pins. And similar to the other setup, except we would be using these text objects instead. Uh-oh, wait. This is not right. at all. Got way ahead of myself. I wonder how far back I can undo. Let's try and go back in time. Yeah, so definitely want to be using this index. And we basically just want to be using 4 of these and executing each one depending on the index that's selected. So when index 1 is selected, it will be visible and everything else will be invisible. And same for text 1. Button 2, and everything else is invisible. So hopefully I'm doing this right. Best way to check, of course, is to try it out in the game. Although you can go on each and every function and hover over the input pin and you can see where the nodes are routed to. But it's not ideal. Okay, so let's route up this way. And finish up this last one here. So let's talk to this guy. It works well. There's no text because the text has to get set on the officer, as you can see here, but we have to create the inputs for those choice 1 and choice 2, and that has to get done on the parent. And we have those, actually. However, we need to create an input on the function. So we'll route those in here, rename them so they're kind of consistent. Whoops. No, you want choice 3 and choice 4. And if we head over to the officer, we have those input pins now. I'm going to say hi and hello. It doesn't really matter what those are, so I want to make sure they work. And if we talk to them, perfect. Text is changing. Our cursor is moving around. We can select it, although we don't have any, input over here with regards to what we've selected, but that's fine. That's not an issue for this guy here. We can actually leave these, we'll leave it populated for now. We'll empty it out later once we're correcting it. Yeah, gotta check that out for sure. Back on the question widget, the next thing we gotta do is, as you can see from here, this is what's driving our button text, sort of like the visuals, with regards to what are our questions. So what I want to do now is set up some controls for how many questions we have. And the most logical way that comes to my mind would be to do this through an integer. So I'm going to move this to the top. I'm going to call this number of questions. And then we're going to switch on that integer. By default, I don't think we'll need a default pin. On the function, we can have a default, I believe. We'll put the default value at 2. Most questions will have just 2. Or in most instances, when players are given choices, it'll be between 2, unless it's like a dialogue tree or something like that. But for most interactions, it'd be yes or no, cancel, that kind of thing. Confirm, back, whatever. So we can have up to our 4 questions, basically, starting at 0, unfortunately. So to keep that in mind when programming that everything counts up from 0. Can get a little confusing if you're not used to it. I'm going to create a reroute node here and just shift everything over. I know you move it. No, not going to move it down. Just got to move this up. And depending on what's here, we need to modify which buttons are visible to the player. So we know button 3 is our last one, so we'll just grab them. And we'll say remove, right? Remove child. Oh, sorry, not remove child. We want to remove content. Or I guess item in this case. Whoops, nope. Remove from parent is the easiest one. Definitely. So 3 and 4. And basically, for passing through here, well, it should never be 0. I mean, you should always start at 2, if you think about it. Number of questions, you always start at 2, and 3 and 4. Gonna get rid of that last pin for now. So we're only gonna have between 2 and 4 questions. We can add to this later if need be, but for the sake of this, I mean, it's not a tutorial, but for the sake of what we're doing here, just figuring things out, let's just work with 4. Basically, if you have 2 options, you're removing 2 and 3. If you have 3 options, you're just removing 3. So you're never removing those 2. Got a little bit ahead of myself there. So yeah, it's set up sort of like this. If there's 2 questions, we're removing the last 2. 3 questions, we're removing just the last 1. And if there are 4 questions, we're not removing any between the last 2 we added. Removes question boxes based on number of questions. We're also going to need a new variable for this. Can we call it the same? That's a good question. Number of questions. No conflicts, because I guess that's just an input pin, which is really cool, because we definitely want to pass that through here. And we want this this information on the widget because based on the number of questions, that's going to affect the maximum index. Mainly for our what the index is equal to and what the maximum and, well, the minimum is always 0, that's fine, but what the maximum is. And it should be, I believe, number of questions plus or minus 1, because if we have 4 questions, the max index would be 3. So let's hook that up over here. Test this out. I think it should work just fine. Actually, not yet. What we have to do is set up a way to set this from our function. So if we hop back here, let's go to the parent, and we have our input from our dialog actor, or our question widget, number of questions. We want to add that to the function on the parent. And just for my own happiness, so I move this to the top. Number of questions gets passed through just like that. Beautiful. Heading back over to the parent, so we can see this is 0. I don't like that, so I have to make sure to set the default as to. So if we open a reference questions box, oh, not the event, definitely not that. We want to call the function. Yeah, default is 2. Perfect. So we know how that works. And you know what? Just for a failsafe, over on the set choice function, over here we're going to actually have a default pin and route that up here to 2. That way, just in case any errors are made, it'll correct itself and work as default for 2 questions. So if there are 2 questions, we shouldn't have a choice 3 or 4, and our maximum index on our selection should be just between the button 0 and button 1. So my index, or my widget, is looking all funny, and the clamp isn't working correctly either. So right off the bat, what I know I can do is, because we're using this value to clamp the number of questions, we're setting that as 2, which means the clamp, which means on the event graph, this is actually showing as 1 between button 0 and button 1. And the maximum should be, well, in that case, it should be 1. So if the index is equal to 3, oh, that is totally wrong. That should definitely stay as 0, and this should go up there. That might be why. But for what I'm saying, the reason why our questions went all the way to the top of the widget is because this top one is actually the sort of container for whether or not this is auto or fill, and because we're using the fill setting here, it's what's pressing and keeping everything else from rising to the top. So a really quick way to work around that is to actually not remove them from parent, keep them as part of the widget, but remove their visibility. Set visibility, and basically set it to hidden. And this is going to work the exact same way. And by keeping them there, they'll never be accessible or pressed because we have that clamp set up based off of the number of questions we've set. But this way we should maintain the visual consistency of the questions aligning just above the dialog. I'm just going to pass that through here. So let's compile and take a look at how this plays out now. Looks good. Right, just 2. Can't go any higher. Beautiful. Okay. So it works now. Only took almost half of the stream's runtime, but we set up the dialogue. Well, expanded the dialogue conversation options. Let me just make a note of this in my notebook here. Okay. So with that set, I'm going to save all, and then we can get back into actually doing what I wanted to set out to do on this stream. Again, my apologies, but we're figuring things out as we go. Okay, let's close these. It should be good to go. So, main character, inactive NPC variant is what we're working on right now. Let's see here. Let me check my notes. Okay. We have this dialogue tree. Pretty simple. And we're basically using this if the ruins run is active. That should be true. For false, we should have a different string of dialogue. Wonder if this should be set further back or not. To be determined, I guess. What we can do, yeah, we probably do need to move that over. Let's just move the actor phase to be the first thing we do. And depending on what that is, we would fly out of here. Because our rune's going to be active, and then she would say her sort of default response. Now, this isn't set in stone. I just don't want to lose this for the moment, because these options we're building are most likely going to be made available during any point in the, whether you're in ready to go to the ruins or if you're just, hanging out at home kind of deal. So coming out from here, to start, we'll set it up the same way. Bring this down here. Set that up. Probably should slide these up and move these over. And move this up. Okay. I'll put some generic dialogue here, something like advance. What is up? Cheesy, I know. And I just want to run the end interaction immediately. Let's make sure this is all firing as it's supposed to. Yep, works. Cool. Also, the dialogue for the avatar isn't exactly correct. Let's just pull that to the hunter's clothes, because that is a newer artwork that we've made. So actually what should happen is we should we should flag this as a question and set this to index 1 is fine. I mean, it could be 0 as well, actually, since everything counts up from 0. That's probably wise. If we take a look at the parent, question, oh, by default it is 1. That's really bizarre. I'm going to change that by default, and it should be fine because whenever a question is called, we set it so nothing should be broken over here. Yeah, it's fine. In any case, back on NPC Maya over here. Yeah, so she would say, hey, what's up? Call a question. And I'm going to... We could just copy these over, I think. Since they both have the same parent, the same information should get called over. So it looks like it works fine in this case too. Except we set question to 0, and we definitely want that to fly out from here. And launch questions, that looks good. Let's try it out. So she should give us the same as the officer, which is cool. So let's move the choices also. Choice made gets passed through as a print string, which is pretty cool, gotta say. Yeah, we should be able to pull all of these over. It should be fine. So choice made, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So because these aren't dialogues, we don't actually need to work with the chapter settings. In fact, we don't use a chapter setting anywhere on here except for these two we passed in. Find references, yeah, just those two. But depending on what you pick, you will actually get different different dialogue potentially. So you know what? I'll keep that there. I'll close this. Do that later. So we have a few questions. We want 4, I believe, and we'll see what these are. Let me just refer to my notes over here. The questions I want to have for this inactive NPC character, you know, we would have options like switch over, manage items, which would launch a separate widget, basically similar to the item stash, but it would transfer between the inventory arrays for both characters instead of the stash. Manage items. We would probably have one for like Nevermind, and I think one for I think talk should be good, but talk would be get the placeholder. What I'm thinking of is a way for the player to talk to their, you know, the partner character, and basically as sort of a reminder to find out what's going on in the story. You know, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you're playing a game, take a break for a few days because, you know, life comes at you. You got work, overtime, whatever, school, exams, right? And then you forget what's going on. So you want to have a built-in feature so you can talk to the character, and it would give you some dialogue. And depending, you know, based on the choices that are coming in, you would have the different dialogue trees that could be spawned out from here. Looking at the police officer, we have response, and we have start. So I had some comments here, or comment bubble, I guess. And we're going to call this a initialize or start. That's fine. And these all can work fairly well. I think there shouldn't be any issues with them. And when we remove from parent, we should, I believe, execute back into, let's see, start, maybe? Execute back into the actor phase, which is interesting. You know what? We'll keep that consistent. For the time being, we'll keep that up there. The whole we'll preserve this ruins mode to keep that in mind. Some things may change. So we'll leave it as comment and call this black because I have color coded black for things that need to be addressed. So definitely stands out among the other bubble colors I have here. Based on the selection, if we take a look at we're gonna have to take a look at that questions widget. Just gotta double check something. Or I mean, maybe not. Okay, I can see the choices are getting called from that print string. So it works. It's not like we forgot anything. So to build the actual dialogue out, switch over. Now this is a function that actually hasn't been developed yet, but basically we could switch to the other character. And so basically we'd set the player character to control the playable, like the Maya blueprint, and we'll possess that character, kill this one, and then spawn the other character in its place. No matter what, they're going to have dialogue to go with them. Manage items. So this would be based off of different blueprints. So what we could do is set up a chapter selection, because we are going to need it after all. Anything that isn't like a static object. So let's grab an integer here, or grab a switch on integer here, and grab our chapter. Our chapter variable, hook that up here, move it into a position, and pass that through. By default, it should be 0, right? Perfect. And then, based on whatever the input is, we route it as so. I don't actually need a switch on integer. Could we? No, we do need to do it this way. Thinking of just setting this to whatever's coming in, but because what's coming in is the button index from 0 to 3, and then 0 is the chapter. It's just better this way. There would be a lot of unnecessary math, I think. So keep it this way. We get a cleaner result from a logic and readability perspective. Okay, so, if we set question, if we selected this option here, now we would be getting the switch over chapter 1. So it's 4 options, so we're going to have 4 more chapters. Going from, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 being default and only being called on start. So this works well for our logic. This would be, a response for switch character. And they're all going to use the same page structure because that works for our dialog macros. We're going to label up these comments. Response, switch, image items. Okay, so these are ready to go in terms of conversation. Right. For 0 and 1, you don't need anything else. Let's put some test dialog here. If I'm feeling tired, sure, I can take over. Not a question, and is last dialog. Yeah, we'll set that for yes. End interaction, sure. We can call that. We can also put a red comment box. Whoops, did not mean to check that on the parent. What we can do is put a red comment box on this. End interaction. Let's grab a nice bright red. Yep, pretty good. So let's test out the conversation flow, make sure that's working. Up, it does not. What is up? So we should get that question box, right? End interaction. Yeah, we don't want to end the interaction there. It is the last dialogue. Hold on. Should be set to no. But to prevent conflicts, I really think that these should have a sort of like a failsafe built in. Probably an AND Boolean. Basically being this has to be true and question has to be false. So I'll close that. We'll run this, and then I'll turn this back on and run it and see if that failsafe is working. Not working the way I want it to at all. Also, Oh, right. Okay, no problem. Just got a little confused. Maybe this does have to be the last dialogue. Yes, it definitely does. So if I go to switch over, we get nothing. See, switch over is choice 1, which should be button 0, which should be chapter 1. Interesting. I'm going to pull this over to my other monitor and debug against this, see what's going on. Also, it's firing twice, which is weird. It's a little strange that it's not working. I swear it was earlier. The pins are firing. Just trying to find out why. Get rid of that. That did cause some issues. Looking at the officer, we have these two here. Just out of curiosity, if I duplicate this, send this here, and move this one up. And if we remove this and remove this from that string, compile and save. Whoa, why can't I? Very weird. Question 0 is set. Huh. Question widget removed from parent. If we look at the interact object, we have question box setup. Doesn't affect the dialog widget. Yeah, we're gonna have to do some debugging now. Let's move this over. Now let's see what's going on. Okay, so while this event is being called, we're not getting the blueprint interface. It's not being called. So take a look at our HUD. Go to our dialog sample, see what's going on. I'll move this one over so I can debug over here. You know what? I feel as though I broke something inside of her macro. Well, actually I didn't. Let's try with the officer, see what's going on. Okay, so he's having no issues populating questions. He also doesn't have this flagged as his last dialogue, which is interesting. Okay, little nuances. Yeah, it works fairly well. Back in here, I'm just going to, so we have this end interaction that we call, real quick, just going to create a print string. Change the color to something not default. Maybe a pink would be good. I'll execute character change. I can move the execution pin over here because they're all gonna end the interaction no matter what. Actually, maybe not. But in any case, we can make use of this as well. What do you need, right? And from here you would have execute widget underscore item transfer. So this could be a new widget or built on our item stash widget we have existing, sort of making it a bit more customizable slash customizable for the case we need, kind of like the stores in the shopping alley, where we can populate their data even though it's using the same widget, which may or may not be the way to go. Actually, it won't be, because the item stash has tabs and the player inventories do not. Yeah, we'll just end the interaction for now, though. But normally, you would execute the widget, and then you would manage items you need, transfer them around, and then come back to this dialog and probably come to a different chapter, exiting from the managing items. Or it might actually execute back into here, sort of like, what do you need, or maybe over here, or you get back to the menu, I think. That's what should happen. So from start, what are the other questions we have? Never mind and talk. And this is response, talk. So we can grab our game instance reference. And from here, we would check the chapter. Is that right? Chapter, or probably not. Probably the mission index. We don't want to update it, but what we want to do is get mission map, get mission index. I think it'd be the index. Let me just hop over to the game instance real quick. That map integer might be something set up for later. Where am I here? General, game instance. And what I want to do here is... Okay, here's the mission map, where we have a integer paired with what? Task name? That's a struct. How weird. I have pages of dialogue if needed. Interesting. Yeah, it seems as though they're meant to be used together. In any case, we would just have a switch on integer, and depending where we are in the story, we would actually execute dialogue differently. As per player objectives. I leave that note there. Let me move this back over. The never mind response really would just be probably the simplest one, actually, when you think about it. It would probably be something like, all right then, I will Talk to you later. So bizarre. Whoa. Oh, what did I do? Definitely broke something. So he seems to have no issues. I don't love that. Set chapter 3, yeah, that should work. Just fine. Some stuff to troubleshoot. Very bizarre. I don't even. So that works pretty normally. I'll try that again. Yeah, I should close dialogue. That's fine. Choice made 1. That should bring us to chapter 2. Yeah, all these paths and switches are all correct. Very weird. But let's just figure this out. Test. 2. We'll make her say that. Whoops! Wrong one. How bizarre. Okay. Well, that is the consistent way I had it plotted out. But how bizarre. Okay. Let's see here. Definitely to troubleshoot around this issue. But somehow I feel like this was a limitation I had left. So I don't think it's an issue. It just could be better. This should not be called, right? Based on the officer. This passes through here after phase 0. We could quickly make this a little bit cleaner. I mean, for now, these aren't really meant to all route into here. They're all supposed to have specific functions, whereas this is more dialogue, and this is a function of character switching, and this is an item transfer widget. But down here, this Nevermind actor, this should really, if you think about it, we shouldn't even use a chapter 3 here. In fact, this could be chapter 3. This really should use a actor phase of 2. Sort of like an exit. Pass that through here. And all of these can route to page 0, because we definitely want that. But then everything else can just route here. And this should work nicely. Chapter 3 should route into here. Response talk. And we can add these comments to these. I may redo the order of this because I kind of want talk to be at the bottom, but in any case, the actor phase here of 2 should route down here, because this is our exit. Just want to double check that this works now. Whoops. Okay, yeah, this is sort of working as I wanted to. It's just a little messy. We could move some of these nodes over just to prevent a little bit of the overlapping of these wires. Yeah, it's a little better. I mean, to be honest, I think this is going to be like a huge amount of dialogue options here. Basically, for wherever you are in the game, you need a little bit of dialogue. And these are okay. That's a bit more natural and should serve the functions I need. Okay, so I think I'm going to call it for today. We need to set a little bit of time for debugging the inconsistencies between why she repeats intro text like that, and then sometimes she doesn't. Right? So that's a perfect example of that. But you're going to figure that out, make it a bit more stable, and then also sort of add some functionality, work on the actual logic on how the player character is going to switch to the other one. I don't think it should be too hard, just a matter of creating the actor at the player location, possessing it, deleting the current one, but also making sure all the items are saved. So, no big deal. I think it's all functions that are existing within Unreal and functions that are that we've built for the level traveling, where we save our inventory to the game instance and stuff like that. So, in closing, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully, I'll see you next time. Later.